The medical bay of the GSS Dominion hummed with the quiet efficiency of alien technology. Rows of recovery pods lined the sterile walls, each containing wounded soldiers from dozens of different species. The recent battle against the Zephyrian raiders had been brutal, leaving nearly half the ship's complement nursing injuries ranging from plasma burns to severed limbs. In the corner pod, barely visible beneath layers of medical gauze and regeneration gel, lay what appeared to be an unremarkable human soldier. His name tag read Marcus Chen in standard galactic script, though few bothered to read it. To his alien comrades, he was just another wounded human, soft, weak, and utterly forgettable. Commander Vextar, a towering Kralian with chitinous armor naturally grown into his skin, stood near the central monitoring station. His four eyes surveyed the medical bay with the practiced gaze of a veteran officer. Around him, a cluster of his most trusted soldiers had gathered for their daily briefing. "The human casualties are higher than expected," Sergeant Zolrak muttered, his reptilian tongue flicking out to taste the recycled air. 17 wounded, 3 dead. Perhaps we should reconsider their placement in frontline units. A chorus of agreement rippled through the group. Lieutenant Thys, her crystalline features reflecting the medical bay's blue lighting, nodded slowly. "They lack the natural armor of our people. Their bones break too easily. Their skin tears like paper." "At least they breed quickly," added Corporal Nixwell with a dismissive gesture of his six-fingered hand. "The Terran Council sends more replacements faster than we lose them." Commander Vexitar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. "True. Though I wonder if quality might serve us better than quantity. Look at that one there." He gestured toward Marcus Chen's pod. "Took shrapnel to the chest and legs. Any proper warrior would have fought through such minor wounds." The group turned to observe the seemingly unconscious human. Marcus appeared to be sleeping, his breathing steady and controlled despite the obvious pain medication coursing through his system. Bandages covered most of his torso, and his left leg was elevated in a mechanical brace. "I heard he was crying when they brought him in," Sergeant Zolrak said with evident disdain, actual tears streaming down his face. "Can you imagine?" "Pathetic," Lieutenant Thys agreed. "My spawning siblings show more courage during their first molt." What they didn't know, what none of them could have known, was that Marcus Chen was indeed awake. His enhanced hearing, a modification that wasn't listed in his standard medical files, picked up every word of their conversation. More importantly, they had no idea who they were actually talking about. The man they dismissed as a crying, wounded weakling was arguably the most dangerous human alive. In the shadowy corridors of military intelligence, he was known by many names, but the one that made even hardened veterans whisper in fear was Baba Yaga, the boogeyman who hunted monsters. Marcus had spent the last 15 years of his life in the deepest, darkest operations that the Terran military complex could devise. While other soldiers fought honorable battles against known enemies, Marcus eliminated problems that weren't supposed to exist. Rogue AI collectives, illegal bioweapon laboratories, and corrupt officials who sold human colonies to alien slavers all had fallen to his particular set of skills. His current assignment aboard the GSS Dominion was supposed to be a vacation of sorts. Command had insisted he take a normal posting after his last mission had required him to single-handedly infiltrate and destroy a Vorthon breeding facility that was creating super soldiers designed to hunt humans specifically. The psychological evaluation team had recommended mundane military service to help him readjust to regular social interaction. The irony wasn't lost on him as he listened to aliens who considered themselves superior warriors mock his apparent weakness. "Perhaps we should recommend to the High Command that humans be restricted to support roles," Commander Vexitar mused. "Communications, supply management, technical maintenance, tasks more suited to their limited capabilities." "Agreed," Corporal Nixwell said. Leave the real fighting to those equipped for it. Marcus allowed himself a small smile beneath his bandages. If only they knew that the limited human lying before them had personally ended 3 separate alien conspiracies to destroy Earth. Or that the tears they mocked had been tears of relief. Relief that his cover identity had held up long enough for him to complete his primary mission aboard this ship. The Zephyrian raider attack hadn't been random. Marcus had discovered evidence that someone aboard the Dominion was feeding intelligence to the raiders, helping them target Galactic Coalition supply convoys with devastating accuracy. His wounds were carefully staged, the result of controlled explosive charges he'd triggered himself to create the perfect cover story while he worked to identify the traitor. "Sir?" came a new voice as another alien approached the group. This was Dr. Kelmoth, the ship's chief medical officer. His species, the Helix, resembled enormous walking seahorses with manipulator appendages that could perform surgery with microscopic precision. "Doctor," Commander Vextar acknowledged with a slight bow of respect. "I wanted to update you on the human casualty projections," Dr. Kelmoth said, consulting a holographic display that materialized from his wrist device. "Most will recover within the standard regeneration time frame. However, the human in Pod 7, Marcus Chen, may require extended treatment." "Oh?" The commander's interest was clearly minimal. "His injuries are more severe than initially assessed. The shrapnel caused internal damage that human physiology struggles to repair as efficiently as other species. He may be unfit for duty for several cycles." "Unfortunate, but not unexpected," Lieutenant This commented. "Shall we request a replacement from the Terran reserves?" "Not necessary," Commander Vextar decided. "We can manage with our current complement. One less human in the ranks might actually improve our overall efficiency." Marcus continued to monitor their conversation while simultaneously running tactical calculations in his head. He'd identified 12 potential suspects for the intelligence leak, but recent events had narrowed it down to 3 possibilities. All of them were currently standing within 15 meters of his medical pod. The conversation continued for several more minutes, with various members of the command staff taking turns to criticize human military capabilities. They discussed everything from humans' poor night vision to their inadequate physical strength, comparing them unfavorably to virtually every other species in the Galactic Coalition. "I've seen Terran entertainment programs," Sergeant Zolrak said, with what passed for laughter among his people. "They create fictional stories about individual humans who can defeat entire armies. Pure fantasy, obviously, but it reveals their desperate desire to be seen as dangerous. Compensation for their obvious deficiencies," agreed Corporal Nixwell. "In reality, humans are barely suitable for manual labor, let alone warfare." As the group finally began to disperse, returning to their various duties, Marcus made his decision. The intelligence leak had to be stopped, and his cover gave him the perfect opportunity to do so. Let them continue to underestimate humanity in general, and him in particular. Their arrogance would be their downfall. Dr. Kelmoth remained behind, checking various readings on the medical monitoring systems. Marcus made a slight adjustment to his breathing pattern, enough to trigger the pod's sensors and alert the doctor to his awakening. "Ah, you're conscious," Dr. Kelmoth observed, moving closer to examine his patient. "How are you feeling, Marcus Chen?" "Like I got hit by a cargo transport," Marcus replied in a deliberately weak voice, adding just a hint of a tremor to suggest lingering shock and pain. "How bad is it, Doc?" "Your injuries are significant but not life-threatening. The regeneration therapy will take time, however. You should expect to remain in medical care for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer." 2 weeks? Marcus allowed disappointment to color his voice. "But my unit—" "Will manage without you," the doctor said firmly. "Your body needs time to heal. Rest is the best medicine for humans in your condition." Marcus nodded weakly and closed his eyes as if exhausted by the brief conversation. Dr. Kelmoth made a few notes on his display and moved on to check other patients. Alone again, Marcus began to plan. 2 weeks would be more than enough time to identify and eliminate the traitor. The question wasn't whether he could do it without blowing his cover. The question was whether he could do it without his alien crewmates realizing that their assumptions about human capabilities were not just wrong, but catastrophically wrong. In the darkness of the medical bay, with alien technology humming softly around him, the man known as Baba Yaga began to weave his web. 3 days had passed since Marcus began his careful observation of the ship's crew. To everyone aboard the GSS Dominion, he remained the wounded human soldier slowly recovering in Medical Bay Pod 7. His daily routine consisted of physical therapy sessions, meals delivered to his bedside, and long periods of apparent rest that his alien observers interpreted as typical human weakness. In reality, Marcus had been anything but idle. Using skills honed through decades of covert operations, he had established a comprehensive surveillance network using the ship's own systems against it. A few carefully placed microtransmitters, disguised as medical monitoring devices, now fed him real-time intelligence from key locations throughout the vessel. The breakthrough came during his 4th night aboard. While pretending to sleep, Marcus monitored communications from the bridge and discovered that another convoy attack was being planned. Someone was definitely feeding information to the Zephyrian raiders, and the next strike would happen within 48 hours. "The human is becoming restless," he heard Sergeant Zolrak reporting to Commander Vex's tar during the morning shift change. "Dr. Kelmoth says he keeps asking when he can return to duty." "Typical human impatience," the commander replied dismissively. "They lack the wisdom to understand that proper healing takes time. Let him complain. It changes nothing." Marcus had to admire their consistency. Even when he displayed what they should have recognized as admirable dedication to duty, they found a way to frame it as a character flaw. Their blind prejudice was making his job significantly easier. Later that morning, Lieutenant Thys visited the medical bay to check on her own soldiers. As she passed Marcus's pod, she noticed he was awake and reading from a holographic display. "What is that?" she asked, her crystalline features reflecting curiosity despite her obvious disdain for human fragility. "Military history," Marcus replied, making sure his voice still carried the slight rasp of someone recovering from injury. "Battle of Proxima Ridge. I'm trying to understand what went wrong during our last engagement." Lieutenant Thys leaned closer to examine the display. The text showed detailed tactical analyses of various historical battles, most of which featured overwhelming alien victories against human forces. "Admirable that you wish to learn," she admitted grudgingly. "But perhaps you should focus on battles more relevant to your capabilities. These engagements involve sophisticated strategies beyond typical human comprehension." "You're probably right," Marcus agreed with carefully manufactured humility. "But I figure if I'm going to serve alongside superior warriors like yourself, I should at least try to understand how real soldiers think." The compliment had its intended effect. Lieutenant Thys straightened with obvious pride, her crystalline skin taking on a brighter hue that indicated pleasure among her species. "That shows wisdom, human. Perhaps there is hope for your kind after all, even if progress will be slow." After she left, Marcus allowed himself a moment of genuine amusement. The military history he'd been reading was actually a detailed schematic of the ship's communication array, disguised using holographic overlay technology. While Lieutenant Thys had been lecturing him about human limitations, he'd been memorizing the exact layout of the systems he would need to access to trace the intelligence leak. That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Corporal Nixwell approached his pod with obvious reluctance, carrying what appeared to be a meal tray. "The mess hall sent this," the six-fingered alien said without preamble, setting the tray down with unnecessary force that sloshed the soup over its rim. "Thank you," Marcus replied, then added with calculated timing, "I know you probably have better things to do than deliver food to wounded humans." Corporal Nixwell paused, apparently not expecting such direct acknowledgement of his feelings. "It is part of military protocol. All wounded soldiers receive proper care regardless of species." "Still, I appreciate it," Marcus continued, playing his role perfectly. "I know most of you see humans as weak links in the coalition forces. Can't say I blame you after my performance in the last battle." The alien's discomfort was obvious. He'd expected either defiance or obliviousness from the human, not this frank admission of inadequacy. "You fought adequately for your species," Nixwell said eventually, clearly struggling to find something diplomatic to say. "Adequately," Marcus repeated with a bitter laugh that he didn't have to fake. "I suppose that's better than pathetically or embarrassingly. I heard what you all said the other day about human soldiers being better suited for support roles." Corporal Nixwell's skin flushed a darker shade of purple, a sign of embarrassment among his people. "You were unconscious. I did not realize you could hear." "Enhanced medical monitoring," Marcus lied smoothly. "The pods keep patients in a light sleep cycle that allows for auditory processing. Helps with recovery, apparently." This wasn't entirely false. The medical pods did have such capabilities, though Marcus had been fully awake and listening through his own enhanced hearing rather than any medical device. We did not mean to cause distress," Nixwell said awkwardly. "No distress," Marcus assured him. "Just reality. Humans are physically weaker than most coalition species. We're slower, more fragile, less durable. I've known that my whole life." The alien seemed relieved by this reasonable response. "Then you understand our concerns about human integration into frontline units." "Completely," Marcus agreed. "Though I hope someday we might prove that humans have other qualities that could be useful. Even if we're not the strongest or fastest, maybe we could contribute in different ways." Corporal Nixwell considered this for a moment. "Perhaps. Your species does show remarkable persistence, even if it is often misapplied." After the alien left, Marcus began eating his meal while analyzing what he'd learned from the conversation. Nixwell's body language and speech patterns suggested genuine discomfort with the prejudice he'd expressed, which made him the least likely of the three suspects. The corporal was biased, certainly, but his bias came from cultural conditioning rather than malicious intent. That left Commander Vextar and Lieutenant Thus as the primary suspects. Evening brought another development. Dr. Kelmoth announced that Marcus's recovery was progressing ahead of schedule, thanks to what he described as unexpectedly robust human healing responses. In reality, Marcus had been using his own medical knowledge to optimize the treatment protocols, making subtle adjustments to his regeneration therapy that accelerated his apparent recovery without raising suspicions. "You may be able to return to light duty within a week," the doctor informed him during the evening medical check. "That's wonderful news," Marcus replied, though internally he was calculating whether that would give him enough time to complete his mission. "I'll be glad to contribute to the ship's operations again, even if it's just maintenance work or something similar." "Do not sell yourself short," Dr. Kelmoth said with surprising warmth. "I have treated soldiers from 47 different species over my career. Courage is not measured only in physical strength." This was interesting. Dr. Kelmoth was the first crew member to express anything approaching respect for human capabilities. Marcus filed this information away for future reference. That night, while the ship operated on minimal night shift staffing, Marcus made his move. Using his enhanced physical conditioning, which far exceeded what his alien crewmates believed possible for humans, he slipped out of his medical pod and began a careful reconnaissance of the ship's communication center. The security systems were sophisticated, but designed primarily to keep intruders out, not to monitor authorized personnel moving within the ship. Marcus's military credentials gave him legitimate access to most areas, and his apparent invalid status meant no one expected him to be wandering the corridors. The communication center was located 3 decks above the medical bay. Rather than use the turbo lifts, which would leave electronic records of his movement, Marcus chose to navigate through the ship's maintenance passages. His knowledge of alien architecture, gained through years of operating behind enemy lines, served him well as he moved silently through spaces barely large enough to accommodate a human frame. What he found in the communication center confirmed his worst suspicions. Someone had installed unauthorized transmission equipment designed to send encrypted messages outside the normal communication protocols. The installation was professional, virtually undetectable unless you knew exactly what to look for. More importantly, the access logs showed that only 3 individuals had been in the communication center during the time periods when intelligence would have been transmitted to the raiders: Commander Vextar, Lieutenant Thys, and surprisingly, Dr. Kelmoth. Marcus spent 20 minutes documenting everything he found, using micro cameras to record the unauthorized equipment and copying the access logs to a secure data crystal. Then he carefully retraced his route back to the medical bay, arriving just before the automated systems would have registered his absence from the pod. As he settled back into his medical bed, Marcus reflected on what he'd learned. The evidence pointed to all 3 suspects having opportunity, but motive remained unclear. Tomorrow, he would begin the delicate process of determining which of them was betraying the Galactic Coalition to alien raiders. What none of them realized was that they were now being hunted by someone who had earned his reputation by making the impossible look effortless. The wounded human they pitied and dismissed was about to demonstrate exactly why humans had survived and thrived in a galaxy full of supposedly superior species. The game was just beginning. The revelation came during what should have been a routine medical examination. Marcus had spent 2 days carefully observing his 3 suspects, gathering behavioral data and looking for patterns that would reveal the traitor among them. What he discovered was far worse than a simple intelligence leak. Dr. Kelmoth arrived for Marcus's morning checkup, carrying a medical scanner that looked subtly different from the standard equipment. To most observers, the differences would have been invisible: a slightly modified casing, a different arrangement of indicator lights, minute alterations to the control interface. But Marcus had trained for decades to notice exactly these kinds of details. "How are you feeling today, Marcus Chen?" the doctor asked, activating the scanner and beginning his usual examination routine. "Much better," Marcus replied, maintaining his role as a recovering soldier. "The pain is almost completely gone." What Dr. Kelmoth didn't realize was that Marcus recognized the scanner. It was Zephyrian technology, designed not just to monitor biological functions, but to extract detailed genetic and physiological data for later analysis. The doctor wasn't just treating his patients, he was harvesting intelligence about coalition species' biological vulnerabilities. The pieces suddenly fell into place. The Zephyrian raids weren't just about destroying supply convoys, they were part of a larger intelligence operation designed to gather strategic biological information about coalition species. Dr. Kelmoth had been systematically scanning every wounded soldier who passed through his medical bay, building a comprehensive database that would allow the Zephyrians to develop targeted biological weapons. "Your cellular regeneration rates are fascinating," the doctor commented as he worked, apparently unaware that his patient had identified the true purpose of his examination. "Human physiology shows remarkable adaptability compared to most species." "Is that good or bad?" Marcus asked, playing his role while mentally cataloging every detail of the scanning process. "Simply interesting from a medical research perspective," Dr. Kelmoth replied, though Marcus caught the subtle tension in his voice that suggested much more significant implications. As the examination continued, Marcus began to understand the full scope of the operation. The doctor had likely been gathering biological intelligence on every coalition species represented aboard the Dominion. Kralian chitinous armor composition, helix respiratory systems, Therian crystalline neural networks, all of it would be invaluable data for developing species-specific weapons. The irony was staggering. While Commander Vextar and Lieutenant Theiss had been mocking human weakness and fragility, the real threat had been the one crew member who'd shown apparent respect for human capabilities. Dr. Kelmoth's professional demeanor had been the perfect cover for his espionage activities. When the examination ended, Marcus knew he had to act quickly. The next convoy attack was scheduled for tomorrow, and if his suspicions were correct, it would involve biological weapons designed to target specific coalition species based on the data Dr. Kelmoth had been gathering. That evening, Marcus made his decision. It was time for Baba Yaga to emerge from hiding. He waited until the night shift began, when most of the crew would be either asleep or focused on their duties. Then, moving with the fluid precision that had made him legendary in intelligence circles, he slipped out of his medical pod and began preparing for what he did best: elimination of targets that threatened human interests. His first stop was his personal equipment locker. Like all coalition soldiers, Marcus was authorized to maintain personal gear in secure storage. What the ship's inventory system didn't realize was that his personal effects included enough specialized equipment to conduct a one-man war. From a hidden compartment in what appeared to be a standard military duffel bag, Marcus retrieved items that would have horrified his alien crewmates if they'd known what they were looking at. Nanofiber infiltration suit that rendered him effectively invisible to most scanning systems. Plasma knife capable of cutting through meter-thick armor plating. Neural disruptor that could incapacitate targets without leaving obvious evidence. And most importantly, a data extraction device that could copy and wipe computer systems in seconds. 20 minutes after leaving his medical pod, Marcus Chen had transformed from a wounded, recovering soldier into something his alien crewmates couldn't have imagined: a human apex predator operating in his natural environment. Dr. Kelmoth's quarters were located near the medical bay, in a section of the ship designed for senior medical staff. The security systems protecting his personal space were sophisticated by coalition standards, but laughably inadequate against someone with Marcus's training and equipment. What Marcus found inside confirmed his worst fears. Hidden behind false panels in the doctor's personal workspace was a complete intelligence operation. Biological samples from dozens of coalition species, detailed genetic analyses, and most damning of all, direct communication equipment for coordinating with Zephyrian forces. But the discovery that made Marcus's blood run cold was a series of reports detailing planned biological weapon attacks against specific human colonies. Dr. Kelmoth hadn't just been gathering intelligence, he'd been actively participating in planning genocidal attacks against human civilian populations. The doctor returned to his quarters 30 minutes later to find what appeared to be an empty room. Marcus, concealed in shadows that his infiltration suit rendered impenetrable, watched as the alien moved to check his hidden equipment. "Good evening, Doctor," Marcus said quietly, stepping into view. Dr. Kelmoth spun around, his elongated features contorting with shock at seeing the supposedly bedridden human standing in his quarters. "Marcus Chen, you should not be here. You are still recovering from serious injuries." "I'm feeling much better," Marcus replied, his voice carrying none of the weakness and uncertainty that had characterized his previous interactions. "In fact, I've never felt more like myself." The transformation was remarkable. The alien found himself looking at a completely different person. Gone was the hesitant, injured soldier who had accepted alien superiority with humble gratitude. In his place stood someone who radiated dangerous competence with every movement and gesture. "I don't understand," Dr. Kelmoth said. reaching slowly toward what Marcus knew was a concealed weapon. "You've been very busy, Doctor," Marcus continued conversationally, making no move to stop the alien's gradual reach for his weapon. "Biological intelligence gathering, coordination with enemy forces, planning attacks on civilian populations. Quite an impressive operation." "You are confused," the doctor said, his hand now inches from his concealed plasma pistol. "Your injuries may have caused neurological damage. You should return to the medical bay immediately." "Should I?" Marcus asked, and suddenly he was no longer standing across the room. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, he had closed the distance and was standing directly behind the doctor, his plasma knife pressed against the alien's throat. Dr. Kelmoth had never seen anything move that fast. In his species' understanding of physics and biology, such speed was simply impossible for a human. Yet here he was, completely at the mercy of a being he had dismissed as weak and primitive. "Let me introduce myself properly," Marcus said quietly. "My name is Marcus Chen, and I am what humans call Baba Yaga. You've been planning to kill my people, Doctor. That was a serious mistake." The next few minutes provided Dr. Kelmoth with a comprehensive education in human capabilities that contradicted everything he thought he knew about the species. Marcus extracted every detail of the Zephyrian intelligence operation with methods that were both terrifyingly effective and completely non-lethal. When he was finished, he had enough evidence to not only stop the planned convoy attack, but to roll up the entire enemy intelligence network. An hour later, Commander Vextar and Lieutenant Thiss were awakened by security alerts announcing that Dr. Kelmoth had been found unconscious in his quarters, surrounded by evidence of treason that would ensure his execution under coalition military law. The investigation revealed the full scope of his biological intelligence operation, including plans for attacks that would have killed millions of coalition civilians. But perhaps the most shocking discovery was the identity of the human soldier who had uncovered and stopped the operation. When they learned that the weak, fragile human they had been mocking was actually one of the most dangerous individuals in known space, both officers experienced a profound shift in their understanding of human capabilities. Commander Vexatar stood in the medical bay the next morning, looking at the now empty pod where Marcus Chen had been recovering. The human had requested immediate transfer back to active duty, claiming that his injuries had been less severe than initially diagnosed. "Sir," Lieutenant Thiss approached, holding a data pad that contained Marcus Chen's complete military record, the real one, not the sanitized version they'd been shown before. "I've been reading about human special operations capabilities. Did you know they have an entire classification of soldiers designated as impossible deterrents?" "No," the commander admitted, his mandibles clicking nervously. "According to this, Marcus Chen has personally ended 14 different threats to coalition security. He's eliminated rogue AI networks, destroyed illegal weapons facilities, and assassinated enemy commanders that other species considered untouchable." Commander Vextar was quiet for a long moment. "And we told him that humans were only suitable for manual labor." "Yes, sir. Lieutenant, I want you to draft a formal recommendation to Fleet Command. I believe our assessment protocols for human soldiers may need significant revision." As they spoke, Marcus Chen was 3 decks away, preparing for departure aboard a ship that would take him to his next assignment. He'd completed his mission aboard the Dominion, but more importantly, he'd learned something valuable about alien prejudices and how they could be weaponized. Before leaving, he'd made sure that word of his true identity spread throughout the ship. Not for ego or recognition, but because every alien soldier who learned the truth would never again assume that a human was helpless or weak. They would remember the wounded soldier in Medical Bay Pod 7, and they would think twice before underestimating any human they encountered. The man known as Baba Yaga had sent a message that would ripple throughout the Galactic Coalition. Humans might appear fragile, but appearances could be catastrophically deceiving. In a galaxy full of supposedly superior species, humanity's greatest strength had always been the willingness to exceed expectations when it mattered most. And sometimes, when the galaxy's monsters needed hunting, humans proved that they had produced the most effective monster hunter of all.